Alright guys, I've discovered a new show. Well, my mom discovered it for me, but that is beside the point. Either way, it is good, and it is called Moonlight. Has anyone else seen it? I think it's from back in 2007, if I remember correctly. But it's just one season, and if you like vampires and you like detective shows, then you will really enjoy this show, I think. I'm really enjoying it. I was binge watching it yesterday. I've watched it about halfway through the season, and it's really good. It's really interesting, new take on vampires. Some things I've seen before, but some things I really haven't seen before, and I think it's really interesting. So if you like it, let me know. If I've made you discover a brand new show that you really like, let me know, because I have discovered it now, and it's really good. My mom was nice enough to send me the discs because her friend lent her the discs to watch, and she really enjoyed it and thought I would enjoy it. So thank you, Mom, for that. And hopefully I have introduced you to another show that you will binge watch just like me on your days off from work. All right, let's go ahead and get into our content for today. Welcome back, fantasy fiction fanatics. It's great to see you again, and I hope you're doing well. Today we are going to be finishing up our first book in the Mercy Thompson series, Moon Called. How did you guys like it? Did you enjoy it? It was a much quicker book, obviously, than Dragonlance, and maybe that's good, maybe that's bad, I don't know. But we do have lots more books to cover, even if we don't cover them right away. So there will be more Mercy Thompson in your future, I promise. Let me know down below how you enjoyed it, if you're rereading it, or if this is your first time reading it and you enjoyed it, or what you did or didn't like about it. I'd love to hear your opinions. So we read for today chapters 15 through the end, so I believe it was only 2 chapters, which I know is pretty short, but I didn't plan this book out quite as good as the Dragonlance series, just since I forgot that it was much shorter, and that might need to break it up a little bit differently. But I think we'll still have plenty of good content to talk about today, even with the last 2 chapters just getting us transitioned into the next book and everything. So let's go ahead and get started with our recap, as always. All right, so Mercy helps Adam from shifting. That's where we stopped our last set of chapters, was right on the cusp of wondering whether he was going to shift and blow their cover, as it were, that she's been in there trying to help them escape. Because if he shifts, it's going to be kind of a problem. So she stops him from shifting, and they make their escape, though it wasn't as without problems as they were hoping for. They did get caught by a werewolf and ended up needing to escape earlier than planned and a lot more publicly than planned. But they do make it out, and they get Jesse out. But Mercy decides to stay instead of going with Warren and Jesse to escape, in order to tell Adam that there is a witch helping them, or helping the wolves, that is about and casting spells. Adam uses his power, his alpha power, to call all of the werewolves to him, not only his own, but all of the bad guys, all of the lone wolves to him, and they shift. And that's where we then meet Gary, and we hear the reality of what his plot was supposed to be used for. And his plot was actually to get his father to fight Bran, not Adam, in order to get his father to be able to live with the wolf inside him. In the end, though, Gary and his father both end up losing their lives in very different ways for very different reasons. And Mercy then ends up back at her shop at the end of everything. Once everything is settled, Mercy, we are seen back at her shop with Z and a new hire to help her. And she ends up going on a date with Adam through the help of a setup from Jesse. I'm sure that was a setup. She just magically gets sick 2 hours later. But she's going on that date with Adam, and then at the end we find out that Sam is living temporarily at her house. And that's kind of where we end the first book. Again, let me know what you thought of it down below. I would love to talk to you about Mercy Thompson, especially this first book where we're getting everything set up and going for the series. And thanks, Patricia Briggs, for writing such good books. Okay, our first topic is going to be one topic that I really noticed, or at least thought about, in these last couple of chapters. I thought that it was really prominent. And that is going to be that we have a lot of assumptions in this book. And I just kind of realized in these last set of chapters how many assumptions we've been working with, because it seems like a lot of assumptions were disproven in this last couple chapters, if that makes sense. Obviously, I'm going to go into details about the different assumptions and everything. But make sure you let me know down below if you don't understand what I'm exactly talking about. As always, any questions, comments, concerns are always welcome. So, the first assumption, which was an assumption we made way back in the beginning, was about Ben. I don't know if you remember Ben too much. I mean, we do see him at the last moment here a little bit more, but we saw him mostly at the very beginning, and we get a couple mentions of him here at the end where he saved Adam twice from being killed. And the assumptions that we had made at the beginning, when they make that one comment to Mercy, he's kind of teasing her when she was in between the two, Adam's house and her own, during their meeting. Because the assumption she makes about him is because he left London, or was kicked out of London, for what was assumed to be these rapes of young women in London, and that was why he was sent there. It's not 100% proved that he had done it, but he had left London and all of a sudden the rapes had stopped, and so it seemed like he might have been raping women. So she assumed about him that he was untrustworthy, that he was unloyal to Adam, and that he was guilty of the crimes in London. Now, we don't get disproven on the fact about the crimes. We don't know anything about what actually occurred in London at this point. Maybe we'll find out, maybe we won't. We'll have to read more and find out. But we do get the main assumption that because he's this supposedly evil person, he can't be trustworthy, he can't be a nice person, he can't be somebody who would risk his life for his alpha, that he's just kind of in the pack to be in a pack. And that is where we are disproved at the end here, where he saves Adam not once, but twice from being killed. So he is proven to be very loyal. He's not even the person that betrayed Adam. It was a different pack member. He never went against his back to help Gary or anything else, and he saved Adam 2 times. So he is very very loyal, and possibly very trustworthy. At this point, the trustworthy one isn't totally proven, but we've disproved the fact that he is completely untrustworthy, or that he is evil or malicious or any way against Adam, or possibly any other pack members. We don't know at this point how he is relationship to Daryl or Warren or anybody else in the pack. But to Adam, he is definitely proven to be loyal and has risked his life in order to save Adam and his pack from Gary's wolves. So, that is a big assumption. Well, it's not a huge assumption in the fact that we were thinking about it the whole book, but it's a big assumption to make about a character. And now that character has been proven to be different than what we assumed him to be at the beginning, based on Mercy's assumptions that she has made. The next assumption that we have going on here, that's a fairly big assumption for the plot line, is about Elizabetha. So we believe, based on Mercy again, and her thoughts are that Elizabetha is the one that is the witch that is helping out Gary's wolves. Even at the point where Jesse and Warren are driving away, she still believes that it must be Elizabetha that's doing the spell casting that she senses. So we are assuming that this particular character, who we don't know much about other than she is kind of snide and snippy, especially at the beginning of the book when she's helping clean up the wolf that Mercy killed at her warehouse. So we don't really know much about Elizabetta, but we are getting from Mercy that, oh, a witch is helping. The only witch that we really know, or that she really knows that she would think would be involved, is Elizabetta. So she makes the assumption that Elizabetta must be the witch that is helping Adam, or helping against Adam, to hurt Adam. So we make that assumption, and us as a reader do not know the characters well enough to know whether this assumption is correct or not, so we're kind of going with it. It's not an assumption that, again, is prolonged through every single scene, every single moment. We aren't basing the whole entire plot line off of this assumption, but it is an assumption that is made that is proven wrong, that they got it wrong. So instead it ends up being Robert, her grandson, that is the one that's betraying Adam, and he was doing it for money. And Elizabetta is not against it, though she might not be happy that they are coming out to the public. She is not personally against Adam or this plot that would be against the werewolves coming out into the public. So we see her as kind of this gruff woman that might be not the greatest person. We're not really sure too much about Elizabetta because she treats Mercy not so well, but she treats Adam really well. You can see that she really cares about Adam, and that could have worked with the assumption, the fact that she might have wanted Adam to be the boss because she seems to be more loyal to Adam and more caring toward Adam. So we had that assumption that she would be working with the other wolves in order to promote Adam. Possibly to hurt him, but because, I mean, she has seemed like a very gruff person who doesn't want the secret to be out, but we find that she really is, though she's not happy with the secret coming out, she's not somebody who would stoop to that level and stoop to being unloyal. So again, we've had two characters who we have questioned or assumed that their loyalty is less than, and we have discovered that it is more than what Mercy has given them or deemed them, or even us as readers. We didn't question her because we don't know these characters well enough. We don't know Ben really at all. We've had interactions 2 times. And with Elizabetta, she seemed like she could possibly be that kind of person. So we didn't counteract Mercy's assumptions, or at least I didn't. Did you guys counteract the assumptions for either Ben or Elizabetta? I can't speak for any of you guys. But did it seem like that was a very possible assumption that Mercy was making, or did you question it or anything like that? Or did you assume that it could be somebody else? Because I know me reading it, even though I've read it now a couple times, it does seem very possible based on the information we are given in this book that Mercy's assumptions could be correct. And then we have the assumption of Gary's reasons for planning this whole thing, this whole debacle. And that assumption was that he wanted Adam to fight Bran. And he wanted Adam to fight Bran because he didn't want the werewolves to come out into the public. So this is the most important assumption because this one is directly related to the whole plot line. So you might say, oh, well, you know, these other things are important too, these other assumptions. But this is the one that's really the main connection to the plot and the problems that these characters are having. Yes, the one with Elizabetta is part of the plot as well, but it's not quite the core plot point. I mean, it didn't even come up until the last moment that the witch that was involved got involved in the conflict and had to be resolved. So the main plot line is trying to figure out Gary's reasons for doing everything and to find out who was doing everything to begin with. But the assumption that they made that would make sense to them personally was that Adam needed to fight Bran so that way the werewolves didn't come out into the public. And that assumption ended up being wrong as well. And we see exactly that they had elements correct and that's why certain things is happening, but the reasons that they couldn't figure out, or the things that he was doing that they couldn't figure out, is because they had the wrong assumption on what was happening. if they had had the right assumption or if they had had the right information, we don't know how that would have affected the plot or not. But really, he wanted his father to know, they wanted Bran to know what he was doing, why he was doing it, so that way he would then be challenged or try to be killed, whatever else. Bran was going to counteract Gary, and his father would then step up and fight Bran in order to save his son's life, in which case would save his father's life. Though whether Gary really thought this through very well, that's another question, considering, I don't know what the point of having his dad live a long time is if his son doesn't get to enjoy it, because the whole reason his son wanted him to become a werewolf was that way they would be together for longer. So I'm not sure how well this plan was thought through. Does anyone else know that movie line? Anyway, moving on. So I just feel like that one is the main assumption that has been guiding our steps through this whole plot point, this whole book, and it ended up being wrong. They ended up having some of it correct, but really in the end, his motivation was completely different than what our characters thought. And it wasn't really anything about betraying Bran. It wasn't anything about wanting Adam to lead. It wasn't anything about any of the politics of werewolves. It was all about a son's love for his father and how much he really wanted his father to live instead of being killed because his beast is out of control. And then the last assumption that I really saw in this book and that was affected toward this set of chapters was the only one that was the assumption that was correct. And that assumption, though Mercy did not know what led her to that assumption other than a few words between two loyal people, two loyal wolves. In the end, we discovered that they were loyal. As well as a little bit about timing. That part was a little bit secondary in her brain, but it did still end up being correct that there was a werewolf that was in Adam's pack that was working with Gary and his followers and helping set up the ploy against Adam. So in that portion, that motivation and assumption was completely correct. They didn't know, and she knew that she didn't know which wolf it was, but there was indeed a wolf that was against Adam and trying to help Gary kidnap Adam, hurt Jesse, and everything. So the one assumption was correct, and it was based off of a couple of facts that were accurate, but also based on a conversation between two loyal, or at least at this point, loyal wolves. So it's very interesting that that was the assumption that was correct. So the whole point of these assumptions is the fact that they're so important to this plot line. Without these assumptions, the characters would not be doing what they are doing in this plot. The assumptions are driving our characters and their motivations through this entire book. We don't really think of it that way when we're reading, at least I didn't think of it that way, but now here at the end, when so many things have been disproven or have been proven but they're different than the assumption, like Elizaveta really being Robert, the motivation of Gary is really about his saving his dad, not politics, about Ben being completely wrong, about Ben being unloyal and uncaring about Adam. We really see that these assumptions that our character have made, Mercy as well as other characters or other characters who have agreed with her assumptions, are what has made the plotline move along. And it's made it so that way they take actions that they do based on the assumptions that they have. Instead of going to Daryl right away, they go to Warren because they know that Warren would be 100% loyal and everybody else is suspicious. So the assumption that there's a werewolf traitor in the pack makes the whole point with Warren happen and makes the whole Warren and Daryl conflict happen. The assumption about Gary is what makes our Adam's old friend switch sides because they believe that he's also doing it for the same reasons that Mercy does, but then he realizes that he's going about it the wrong way and switches over to Mercy's side to help Adam. So everyone's working under these motivations that then affect the plot and affect their motivations and affect where the plot line goes, versus if they knew for certain this was the case and this was the case, it would be a lot different story, because if she knew exactly who was safe to talk to in the pack, she wouldn't have maybe had to go all the way to see Bran in the first place. Though obviously she would still need a dominant wolf, but Daryl might have been able to help control him. We don't know, because she was suspicious of Daryl. We don't know what her choices would have been. Or maybe she would have had Pack come up with her. They might have been able to search for Jesse sooner. They might have been able to do a lot of different things. They might have been able to continue in a different route than they had because of the assumptions that they made. Alright, so the next topic I want to discuss is going to be our other really huge main topic. And that is about the plot path. How Patricia Briggs has gotten us from point A to point B, from the beginning to the end, and how that's different from, for example, our previous book of Dragonlance. Seeing how the story is different and our plot is different. You're probably like, what are you talking about? So let me go ahead and get into explaining it a bit better. At the beginning of the story, well, let me say this. What we have here, in my opinion, is kind of a circular type of plot. It's kind of like a spiral, I would say. And the fact that point A and point B, point A being the beginning and point B being the ending of this book, are kind of coming back around. So we've got point A where she's at her garage and things are normal, whatever normal is for Mercy at that point. And then we go through all these adventures, all of this plot line, all this stuff with Jesse being kidnapped, all this stuff with Adam, blah, 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 everything that we go through for the book. And then we come back around and we're almost mirroring the first couple chapters of where we started. So we're not exactly in the same place. Point A is here and we circle around and we end maybe just above it. You know, it's in a similar place. We're not quite the same because everything that we do in our lives affect us, whether it's positive or negative. In this case, it was a very big negative. But no matter what, we are affected by it. So we're not at the exact same place, but we're at a very similar point. We're back at the beginning and trying to be a new normal. So that is the kind of plot that we have here, is we go through all this stuff and then we're back at the beginning. We're not quite the same because we don't have Mac anymore. Mac's unfortunately dead. But we do have a new helper, a new male helper that is from Tony's friend's son, who is working to pay off their car. So we have that. We have Z, who is helping out because Mercy has broken her arm. We have had these strenuous events happen, and now we are trying to find a new normal. We're back to life as usual. All this stuff happened, and then we're back to square one. And again, it's not quite the same spot, but it is a similar position. It is still life going on, and we are trying to get through it best as the characters can. So I think that's really interesting. Versus Dragonlance, which had a very straight plot line. We're at point A, and we're trying to get to point B for the end of the first book, and then we're trying to get to point C, which is the end of the the second book, and then to point D, which is the end of the third book. So really want to get from point A to point D, and you span 3 books to get there. So in Dragonlance, we go through book 1, and it's just part of the story, and they've gotten from their normal to a new point in time that's completely different. they're at the end of book 1, they're at that wedding for Gold Moon and Riverwind, and they have a little bit downtime, but it's not going back to life as normal. They still have more to do. And that's the same way it is at the end of book 2. We're at a new spot, new adventures have happening, and we're trying to continue forward. And at the very, very end, at point D, life has not gone back to normal. We are at a completely new place in time. So sure, all the main events have happened, but we are not seeing them trying to establish a new normal. And we don't even know at this point what their new normal is going to be. So it's more than likely, it's actually definitely not going to be the normal, a version of the normal that we had at the beginning. So with Mercy Thompson here, we've got the beginning normal and the ending normal looks very, very similar. It's different, but it's very similar. It's not like the whole world has changed. It's kind of gone, like they've had this little blip in the radar, and now life is back to normal and life keeps going. Life hasn't been destroyed. For Dragonlance, it's basically their life is so altered that they can't get back to where they were, or even some semblance of it. They have to completely reconstruct their lives. And that is the difference of this plot, is we've got our, the Dragonlance we had was more of a straight plot line. We're going from point A to point D, which is a completely different place. For Mercy, at least for this particular book, we will see if that's the case in future books. We've got point A, and point B is someplace very similar to point A. We've come back around. We've done our stuff, and now we're back to as best of a beginning, the best of our normal as possible that we can have at this point. So I find it really, really interesting is that it's kind of almost like a part of everyday life. It's kind of almost treated as if she went to the store and brought some groceries and then she came back kind of event. All this strenuous stuff happened, and still life goes on, and life is back to where they were before, at least as much back to where you could be before after having any events happen to you. What do you think of this plot line, of this, the differences between the plots? What do you like better? Do you think it's interesting that we've kind of gone full circle and now we're back to where we started? Do you wish that we had gotten someplace new? It does definitely show the difference in the kind of storytelling we have, because the Dragonlance was supposed to be one epic adventure, this one big, huge, life-altering event. And that definitely shows with the way that the plotline continues going, and now we're at a completely different place. The characters are completely different. We've lost people. We've got no way of going back to the beginning in any way, shape, or form with Dragonlance. But this is more of a common everyday life kind of deal, where we've got Mercy and something like being kidnapped and almost killed and all this stuff almost seems like it's a normal day-to-day thing, just something that happens in her life, and now we are back to getting back to the grind. We've kind of had our vacation, our very not relaxing vacation, and now we're back to life as normal. And it's kind of more of a slice of life type of deal, where all this happens, and still you gotta go back to doing your grunge, and almost where the characters see it as just part of their life. Like, oh, okay, life happened, now we're back to our calm portion that we prefer to have more often, our calm moments. So what do you think? I'd love to hear your ideas about the plot, about what you think about, coming back to the beginning versus getting somewhere. Anything at all you'd like to comment about that, I would really, truly love to hear about it down below. Now, how do you see character progression at this point? I don't believe, personally, that we have had tons of development in this book, per se. Now, that's different than like in Dragonlance, we had to have a lot more progression because there was only 3 books. They are much denser books, they are much more involved books. So we have had more development needed also to get to where they needed to go. In this, we have a lot more books, so it's okay if the characters progress a little bit slower throughout the books. But I personally didn't see any major changes through our characters or about our characters at this point. I more saw that we have some new perceptions about people. Not necessarily that they are different, but we have, from the beginning of the book to the end of the book, we do have a couple people who have changed in perception, at least for me. So that is a character change of sorts, in the fact that we thought they were one thing and then we realized that they're another. And so in our brains, they have changed, even if that's what they were always to begin with. And the main person I think that we see the biggest change, especially in perception, is of Adam. For me personally. You can let me know down below what you think. As always, I'd love to hear from you. But I do think our Adam changes in our perceptions, because originally the way Mercy makes him sound and the way he kind of sounds at the beginning with the whole warehouse scene is that Adam's kind of a gruff, egotistical kind of werewolf, a little bit. Sounds like, he kind of is rough and gets on Mercy's nerves, though, I mean, he already gets on Mercy's nerves either way, I'm sure. Just because he's Adam. But I feel like she portrays him as a much harsher, much more mean or rude kind of person. And yes, his attitude at the warehouse kind of portrays that. But you can see at the end that he doesn't really feel that way. Especially on his date with Mercy. He's very kind, very nice, really into her. She didn't even think that he was really even liked her. Yes, he does tease her about the cat, but he also really loves that cat and talks about how, he pets her before giving her back, even though he leaves the mean note about eating her. So, and as we get through, especially with her driving him up to see Bran, is that Adam actually gets angry at Sam for being so harsh on her, and he sees her as being really helpful, and he trusts her and doesn't change when they're in danger. Like, she is able to mollify him. He has a picture of her in his room and has claimed her as his mate, even if they're not officially, physically together. He has claimed her as a mate to the pack. He really wanted her to be safe and to leave with Jesse. So, I mean, there's all these little things that have added up and piled up to where at the end you see that Adam is not really as heartless as he was made out to be by Mercy in the beginning. That he actually does have a better attachment to her than she thought he did. All these little clues and things, especially like we said at the end, where he is not very happy that Sam is there and that he is into her and kisses her. We see that there's a much different side to Adam than we originally thought There's a lot more going on with Adam than Mercy even originally thought, so that changes our perceptions of Adam throughout this book. At least me personally. I also feel like Adam and Mercy's relationship changes. I feel like, so instead of being a character, this relationship changes. Because kind of at the same context is we've got the beginning where she sees them as very against each other, very much separate entities that kind of butt heads. And yes, she does butt head with him, like with the car that she puts in the back that she makes more ugly, so that way he can look at it. That's obviously something that she antagonizes him with. But at the end here, we see that she is more of attracted to him than we were originally presumed to believe. She really likes Adam enough that she would go on a date and kiss him at the end of said date. And so their relationship, she even mentions at the end that something has changed when he takes her on that date, that they have progressed to something different than they were originally before everything started. Maybe because all of this happened, Adam finally stepped up to the plate and decided to make a move. Maybe Adam had been planning this for a while. I don't know. Maybe Mercy's just dense and didn't see it, which is very possible. Mercy is not does not seem like the kind of person that would get flirting very well. There's even those couple of comments where like Adam mentions that he looks at her like he just finds enjoyment in her, like when they're at Warren's place. So maybe she just missed how much he liked her, and now she just sees it. But yeah, so now we've gotten perception of Adam has changed, and now Adam and Mercy's relationship has progressed to something different. We don't know exactly what it's going to be in the end, but it has gotten from what they were at the beginning of that book to now at the end, they're in a new place with a different type of understanding. And this is where I'm going to turn the question over to you. Do you see anybody else or any other relationships? I guess you could say, for relationship-wise, we could talk a little bit about Sam and Mercy's relationship. But I don't feel like we have enough developed there to see exactly how that would be changed at this point, other than that they're seeing each other at all. Even talking to each other. But do you see any characters or relationships or anything else that you think has actually changed? If you're going to mention Ben, because we talked about the assumption thing, I'm not sure if Ben's changed enough because we didn't have enough information at the beginning to know who he really was, to know if he's really changed, even in our perception. We just know that the assumptions about him were wrong. But if you feel like he really has changed, please let me know down below, and with some information about why you think that, and I would be happy to have a conversation with you about it and to discuss it with you. Anybody else that you think had a character progression, a character change, a character perception change, whichever else, please let me know down below. I would love to hear your opinions and your ideas. Okay, and then the last little thing before we get to our nitty gritty is just that we're kind of doing a changeover to our next book, and this is going to be a little bit different because in the Dragonlance series we had a lot more ability to talk about the covers. We talked about the titles, we talked about what we expected, what we didn't expect, but it's kind of hard to do that with these books because we've already finished the plot line of that book one. So we're going to be starting something completely separate, something completely new, some different kind of plot, some different kind of trouble, something that doesn't relate to book one other than that the relationships and the characters as we ended in book one are going to be continuing in book two. Or at least as far as we know. I mean, technically they could be just where Mercy's the only person that's the same and everybody else is different. We don't know how much time has passed. So we aren't guaranteed that it's going to line up directly after the events, and we're not working toward the same goal as we did in book one because that's been solved. So this series kind of is hard to make expectations, make educated guesses about what we think might be in the next book, because it can be a completely different story with a completely different topic, a completely different everything. We're not really sure where the author is going to take us or what the next big major catastrophe in Mercy's life is going to be. The only thing that we can really assume is that Mercy will still be our main character, since it is the Mercy Thompson series, and that we will probably still have Sam and Adam and Jesse and all the main characters that we discussed here in the next story, as well as it being the same world, so it's going to have the same world building is going to be carried over to the next one. Let me know if you do have any comments, questions, or concerns about, changing from book one to book two, seeing if you have any expectations or anything else. I would love to hear them. And last, but definitely not least, we have our nitty gritty. And there's only two things that I think we really should keep an eye out, especially moving into the next book. So the only really things that we should really take note of and keep mentioned. The first one is that Mercy can sense all kinds of magic, which seems to be an unusual ability. For the part with Robert and him casting that spell that was going to kill Adam, she not only could sense it and could tell that it was going to be cast and wanted to go warn them, she could tell that there was a witch casting magic, which seems unusual since they mentioned that the werewolves and others could not sense that. So that's why she stayed. But also when she jumps in front of Adam to protect him, the spell doesn't do what it normally should have done, which is still hit Adam, and it instead hits her. And it doesn't kill her like it was supposed to kill Adam. She ends up fighting it off. This might relate to the whole thing that the vampires mentioned and her not being susceptible to the vampires' control. maybe has something to do with that, but I think that's very interesting and will probably play a part as we continue forward, is that Mercy has this extra sense and this extra ability. And second thing is we do have a little bit of a love triangle going on here. At the end here, we've got Adam and Sam both interested in Mercy. Sam being her old flame, Adam being a brand new flame, though she does have more of a relationship with Adam at this point than Sam. It was never romantic until the end of this book. And now Adam and Sam are fighting over her. She can already tell that the tension is rising between these two. So much so that even after they know that she's left the building, they just keep fighting with each other. I think that's hilarious that they're just alone in Mercy's house and they realize she's gone and they take a second to pause and they're like, oh well, and they keep just going. They just keep going at it. We will see who she really ends up being interested in, if she ends up being interested in either of them moving forward in the books. Let me know what you think about Adam and Sam and this little jealousy triangle that we've got going, especially because she goes to see Stefan, who we saw earlier kind of had a claim going, kind of tension going on between Stefan and Sam when they were talking together. We mentioned that a couple episodes ago, so we're going to see what happens with that moving forward and see whose characters and relationships progress respectively. Okay, so I looked at our next book, which is Bloodbound, Book 2 of Mercy Thompson. And we're going to be reading chapters 1 through 4 for the first set of chapters for that. And that will be pages 1 through 91, at least according to my Kindle version, as always. So, I guess that's it for today. Please let me know down below or on Twitter if you have any comments, questions, concerns, anything at all. Please let me know. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Love to have a discussion about, any different thoughts or same thoughts. I'd love to hear it all and to learn from you just as much as I hope that you learn from me. Please also let me know if you really love this book or not, whether you have read other Patricia Briggs books or not, anything at all that has to do with it, please let me know. All right, and I guess I will see you in our next class. Bye.